Assalamu alaikum, dear students. As I promised you earlier that we would have a discussion on functions of intonation. Here is your lecture or discussion on functions of intonation. In our previous lessons, we talked about some important concepts about intonation. We talked about tone unit and also how to identify tone unit and tone unit boundaries. Then we talked about structure, different elements of tone unit like tonic syllable, prehead, head and tail. We also found that there are 5 levels of tone. There are falling tone, for example, yes, rising tone, yes, fall rise tone, yes, rise fall tone, yes, and level tone, yes. Let us have a bit look at the definition of intonation, and we found that intonation is not related to individual segmental phonemes, but it is applied to syllables and therefore it is a part of suprasegmental phonology. And basically speaking, intonation is the rise and fall of voice in speaking, in which we use different keys like high, mid or low, and also pitch of our voice. Let us talk about functions of intonation. Why intonation is needed? Without intonation, human speech will not be a human one, rather it would be something produced by a mechanical speech device. Intonation makes it easier for a listener to understand what a speaker is trying to convey. There are 4 functions of intonation: attitudinal functions, accentual functions, grammatical functions, and discourse functions. The first one is attitudinal functions. Through intonation, we can express our feelings, attitudes, and emotions. For example, using intonation, we can express our anger, boredom, happiness, or gratefulness. Even the same sentence with different intonation can express different emotions. To analyze attitudinal functions of intonation, 3 variables are important. The first one is sequential. You remember that in tone unit we have a particular structure and they come in order. For example, prehead, head, tonic syllable and tail. And also we have pauses and tone unit boundaries. The second variable is prosodic variable. We use different pitch range or key, loudness, speed and voice quality. Body language, gesture, posture, facial expression, they are also used as paralinguistic features. So using these features, we can use intonation to express our emotions or feelings or attitude. There are 4 types of attitudinal intonation: fall intonation, rise intonation, fall rise, and rise fall intonation. Fall intonation. It is regarded as more or less neutral. If someone is asked a question and the reply is yes or no, it will be understood that the question is now answered and that there is nothing more to be said. If you use a falling intonation, thus the falling tone gives an impression of finality. So if you say yes, no, it means that you do not expect anything further. For example, this is the end of the news. I am absolutely certain. Stop playing. I have finished working. Stop talking. Rising intonation conveys an impression that something more is to follow, just opposite of the falling intonation. Falling intonation expresses finality and rising intonation expresses non-finality. For example, I phoned them, but they were not at home. You must write it again, and this time you get it right. I have to leave now because I am getting late. So the emphasis is on now. Rising intonation can also be used while making some general questions, particularly yes/no question. For example, can you help? Is it over? Can I go now? But for WS question we use a falling intonation. Rising intonation is also used while listing things. For example, red, brown, yellow, green and blue. Peter, Jack, Roger and Sam. Oranges, bananas, mangoes and apples. Rising intonation can also be used while encouraging someone, and you are emphasizing the importance of that particular aspect, and you are encouraging someone to take that thing again. For example, it would hurt. You are emphasizing that it will not hurt him or her. You will get it right, so don't bother about your mistakes. There is always next time, so don't stop doing things, because there is always a next time and you can do it better. Fall-rise tone shows limited agreement, response with reservation, uncertainty and doubt. For example, you may be right. That is, you are not 100% sure that whether you may be right or wrong. You have some doubt. It's possible. If I am not mistaken, he may be honest. You are not 100% sure. It can be true. That is, you have some reservation. You do not agree 100%. You can use a rise-fall tone to convey strong feelings of approval, just opposite of the fall-rise tone, or disapproval or surprise. So here the feeling is very strong. For example, it's impossible, that you are 100% sure that it is possible, or it's not possible. You were first, that of course you were first. I strongly believe. All of them. He is honest. It's true. You are 100% sure. Accentual functions. Accentual functions refer to accent. When it is said that intonation has accentual function, it implies that the placement of stress is somewhat determined by intonation. That is, there is some relationship between accent and stress. Tonic syllable can be accented syllable, or there is a tendency of the stressed syllable or accented syllable to be the tonic syllable. Functions of accentual intonation. The most common position for the placement of tonic syllable is the last lexical word, that is noun, adjective, verb or adverb, and not the functional words. But it is not that lexical words are always stressed or accented. For contrastive purpose, any word may become the bearer of tonic syllable. So when you want to show some opposition, show some comparison, of course even the particle, articles, determiners, functional words, they can also be tonic syllable. They can also carry tonic stress. For example, she was wearing a red dress. It is normal. Dress is the final lexical word. It's a noun. That is why it is accented as well as it gets the intonation. But when you want to change, or when you want to show contrast, like she was not wearing a red dress, so she was wearing a green dress. So the comparison is between, contrast is between the red and the green. I want to know where he is traveling to. So it is normal, because traveling is the last lexical word and to is a functional word. But when you want to differentiate between to and from, for example, I don't want to know, okay, it should be no. I don't want to know where he is traveling to, but I want to know where he is traveling from. So here the emphasis is on to and from. Accent is also on to and from because you want to have a contrast between these prepositions. Functions of accentual intonation too. Similarly, the purpose of emphasis. The tonic stress can be placed in other positions as well. Not only the final lexical word, it can be some word before the final lexical one. For example, the movie was very boring. So boring is an adjective. It is a final one. But for contrastive purpose, for emphasizing, you can have the emphasis, you can have the tone or accent on the word before the final lexical word. Like, the movie was very boring. You shouldn't talk so loudly. You shouldn't talk so loudly. The third function of accentual intonation is to clarify the ambiguities. In written version, of course, it is very difficult to understand this, but while using intonation, so you can clarify ambiguous statements. For example, I have plans to leave. So in written form, you use I have plans to leave. But this sentence can have two different meanings. If you say, I have plans to leave, that is, I am planning to leave, I am going out. But when you say, I have plans to leave, it means that I have a number of plans which I don't want to use. Here leave means not, you are not going to use them anymore. You have plans like, say, diagrams, drawings, which you don't want to use anymore. So you see, the same sentence having intonation on two different words have two different meaning. The third function is grammatical function. The listener is better able to recognize the grammar and syntactic structure of what is being said by using the information contained in the intonation. So intonation can signal grammatical and syntactic structure. For example, such things happen like the placement of boundaries, tone boundaries, between phrases, clauses and sentences. So where you find the tone boundaries, you can normally find the phrases, clauses or grammatical boundaries as well. The difference between questions and statements. For question we use particular type of intonation, and for statements we use particular type of intonation as well. So from intonation you can understand whether it is a question or it is a statement. Grammatical intonation is used in those sentences which, when written, are ambiguous and whose ambiguities can only be removed by using differences of intonation. In the following example, the differences caused by the placement of tone unit boundaries causes two different interpretations of sentence. Those who sold quickly made a profit. So a profit was made by those who sold quickly. Those who sold quickly made a profit. So a profit was made by everybody who sold. It doesn't matter whether they sold quickly or not. So you see that those who sold quickly, here you have a tone boundary, and it can also be a grammatical boundary of grammatical unit. So it gives us a particular meaning. But when you have a different grammatical unit, those who sold, and you have the boundary, and you have a different meaning. Another grammatical function of intonation is a choice of tone on the tonic syllable. For example, you can use a rising tone, or normally a rising tone is used with questions. Simply by changing the tone from falling to rising, the possibility of changing a statement to question is created. The price is going up. So it's a falling tone and it's a statement. But when you use a rising tone like the price is going up, so it's a question, because it is having a rising tone. Question tags and intonation. Still another grammatical function of intonation is related with the use of question tags. Difference in falling and rising intonation can cause difference in meanings. For example, they are coming tomorrow. Are not they? The falling tone indicates that the speaker is certain that the information is correct and simply expects the listener to provide confirmation. But when you say, "They are coming tomorrow, are not they?" the rising tone indicates a lesser degree of certainty, and the question tag functions more like a question for information. So you are asking for more information, but in the first one with falling tone, you are asking for confirmation, not further information. The discourse function of intonation. Intonation can signal to the listener what is to be taken as new information and what is already given. It can indicate when the speaker is indicating some sort of contrast or link with material in another tone unit. In conversation, it can convey to the listener what kind of response is being expected from him or her. Attention or focusing. In case of attention focusing, tonic stress is placed on the appropriate syllable of one particular word in the tone unit. So you are using particular tonic stress on particular syllable or appropriate syllable to have a particular meaning. The tonic stress is placed on the word that is the most important. For example, she went to Scotland. He went to the drawing room. So you are emphasizing the most important information is drawing room, not room only, but it's a drawing room, not a say kitchen room, or not a dining room, not a living room, etc. Information content. In a sentence, all the words have some kind of information, but the content of every word or syllable is not equally important. Some of them have very important information and some of them have less important information, and that is called information density. Sometimes the stress is placed on syllables in terms of information content. So you can place tone or stress or accent based on the information content of the syllable or word. The more predictable a word's occurrence in a given sentence, the lower its information content will be. So if it is already predictable that some words will occur, then they have little information or little new information. Tonic stress will be placed on words with high information content. For example, I have to take the dog for a walk. So your emphasis is on dog. So you want to make the listener understand which pet you are going to take for a walk. But when you say, I have to take the dog to the vet, so you are going to take the dog to the doctor, not for a walk. So here vet, the word vet has a high information content. But there can be exceptions. In many cases, it is still difficult to explain the tonic placement in terms of importance or information. For example, in the following sentences, your coat is on fire. So which one is more important in terms of information? Maybe both of them are important because both of them have high information content. The wing is breaking up. So you see that both of them are important, and that is why both of them can be, given stress. So to conclude, I can say that intonation functions in a very complex way. So far we have seen that intonation has 4 types of function, and they are used to give us meaning, to emphasize, to disagree, agree, to focus important information, to give us signal regarding grammatical units and elements, and also they are very important for discourse marking. But of course, it is very difficult for any EFL learner, English as a foreign language learner like ours. It is very difficult for us to understand this kind of functions of intonation, because we cannot, based on the rules that we have discussed so far, we cannot generalize these rules, because it depends on the context, it depends on the native speaker's use of intonation in particular context. That is why the best way to understand intonation is to study the native speaker's species and to understand the pattern of intonation they use. So that is all about functions of intonation. Hope that you have understood, and if you have any comment, If you do not understand anything, just write in the comment box. I will try to give you feedback. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.